Technique AB. Great. Okay. Our next headliner is here to discuss data and AI. With great power comes great responsibility. With a 25-year career encompassing roles in the private sector and international organizations, he actually currently oversees policy, governance, and strategic initiatives in data, AI, and emerging technologies at the United Nations. He advises senior UN leaders on digital transformation and the risks and ethical considerations around data and AI. Please give a warm welcome to the Chief of Data Analytics and Emerging Technologies at the United Nations, Lambert Hogenhout.
Hello, everyone. I want to start with a question. Oh, why is this not working? There it goes. So my question is, do you feel lucky? Now, I know when Clint Eastwood asked this question in the movie, it was more like a rhetorical question. I think he was wielding a gun at the time, but I mean it as a serious question. Put up your hand if you're feeling lucky. I see a lot of hands, but not everybody. And I think it should be everybody. And I'm going to give you 3 reasons why you should feel lucky. And of course, the first one is that you're here at this great conference with a lot of amazing people with whom you share an interest in AI and technology. So that's one reason to be lucky. The second reason, I want to take you through a bit of history. This is a scientific graph of world history. I made it myself, if you didn't notice. But so it starts out kind of flat, right? And then at 600 BC, suddenly there's a lot of activity. In India, the Buddha gets enlightenment and starts this new spiritual tradition, Buddhism. At the same time, in China, Confucius is developing moral and philosophical theories. And at the same time, in Iraq, there's whole cultures blooming. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the 7 wonders of the world, was created at the same time. You go over to Greece, and the philosophers there are developing all kinds of theories. Socrates, Plato, Pythagoras is inventing the triangle around the same time. And then you go further to Latin America. The Olmecs have a blooming culture. They're building huge stone structures that we can still see. All happening within this time span of 50 to 100 years. And then it's quiet for a few centuries. And then around the year 0, there's things happening again. Of course, the birth of a new religion, Christianity. The Romans are being very creative. They're building aqueducts and theaters, which we can still see now. Very busy time. Again, a period of 50 to 100 years. And then it becomes quiet. If you were born in the 5th century, or in the 10th or the 12th century, your life would have been pretty boring. The world when you were born and the world when you died would have been more or less exactly the same. Nothing much happening. And then it blooms up again in the 15th and 16th century. We had the Renaissance, enormous creativity in art, in painting, sculpture, scientific discoveries. You can still see all of these things in museums. In fact, without the Renaissance, 30% of our museums would be empty. So that was, again, a very busy period. And then it was quiet again. And then a little bit of 1900, and then, of course, our current period is going completely crazy. And that's only in the past 25 years. Maybe 50, but 25 really is sort of when it became really active. And that's my second reason, that you're incredibly lucky in the history of the world to be living through one of these pockets of 50 to 100 years when everything changes, lots of innovation, very interesting time. If you were born, let's say after 1980, you might think it's normal, that there's new stuff all the time, that so much innovation, but it's not. These are my grandparents. They were born around 1907, and they lived until the early 1980s. They never got to see, I think they knew that I got the first Apple computer, but they never got to see the Space Invader game that I programmed on it. They were already dead by then. So they missed out on the whole sort of information revolution. During their lifetime, there were only 4 major inventions that changed society, that changed life. Around 1915 or so, they got electricity came to their village. So they could have light bulbs. They didn't have any other appliances at first, but they had light bulbs. It was great. Then at some point they got telephone. And at first only the doctor had a telephone. And he kept waiting for it to ring, but nobody was calling him because he was the only one with a telephone. But eventually everybody had a telephone. And what else did they get? They got cars at a certain point in the 1950s. This was a remote village, so they were a little bit late with these things. And then television. And with each of these things, they had about 15 years to wrap their heads around it. When you have telephones, what's the protocol? In which cases do you walk over to your neighbor's house and knock on the back door? And in which cases do you call them up? They had 15 years to work out those protocols. These days, we don't have that anymore. We have like 15 days or 15 minutes before there's the next major innovation. And a lot of these innovations all has to do with IT, technology, data, AI. Now, all of you being here at the conference, presumably, you have some interest in AI. So there's my third reason for you. Not only are you living through one of the most interesting times in history, but you chose exactly the right field to be in. And as AI builders, designers, implementers, regulators, whatever you are, I want you to be aware of the fact that you have a disproportionately large impact on the world compared to the average person. Everybody has a little bit of impact on the world, right? But if you're lucky and you're born as a king or a queen, or you inherit a huge business empire, you're very rich, then maybe you have a little bit more impact on the world, right? And in the 19th century, you had to be a king or a queen to have such huge impact. These days, by the virtue of working in AI, you have a huge impact. And I want to use my presentation to impress that fact on you and the responsibility that comes with it, and what you can do in order to wield that power that we have in a good way. Of course, we know AI has a lot of potential for good. Education, elderly care, infrastructure management. I put 5 things on here. I could easily put 100, of course, and you're all aware of all the good things that AI can do. Unfortunately, it also has massive potential for bad outcomes. Algorithmic bias and discrimination, and these are not theoretical examples that are here. On the first one, I think Amazon, the company Amazon had a bad experience where it turned out that their AI algorithm that was doing hiring was biased against women. There was a system called Compass in the United States that was making judgments on prisoners and the likelihood that they would reoffend, and it was very biased against black people, and so forth. So these are real problems that are manifesting themselves. Privacy violations. I'm sure all of you have had your personal data disclosed in some data breach or whatever, and now we have AI systems that can leverage all that data. It's not a pleasant thought. Deepfakes and misinformation, we've seen that in the last US elections, and we have elections this year. I don't know what's going to happen. job displacement. I don't know if you remember last year, there were the actors and screenwriters in Hollywood. They had a big demonstration against the use of AI in creating movies. And they got some concessions, but I think obviously there's going to be jobs lost in that industry. Loss of human control. Last year I took one of these robo-taxis in Arizona. So you order the taxi and then you get a code and you get in and it closes the door and then it drives you somewhere without a... It's kind of scary. It can do with me whatever it wants. Security risks because all the hackers have the same access to AI that we have. And they're going to do creative things with it. And AI being used in stock trading. It can, within seconds, it could disrupt the entire market if these AI systems go crazy. And those are all the things that are problems today. I'm not even talking about 3 years from now, 5 years from now. It says uncontrollably self-aware AI, also known as AGI. It's maybe some problem for the future. But I do worry about these things. I worry about what AI is going to do 3 years from now and 5 years from now. And I listen a lot to what industry leaders say on these things. I read reports from futurists that study these things. So I want to give you some quotes. Jensen Huang says that everything that moves will eventually be robotized. Now, of course, you can say maybe he is biased because all these robots need NVIDIA chips, of course, but it's something to think about. I think he has a point. Amy Webb, she's a futurist, and she presented her annual technology report last month at the South by Southwest conference. She said, we're in a tech supercycle that will reshape human existence. That's a pretty powerful statement. And Joshua Bach, he is a German AI researcher and I would say philosopher. He says that AI will force us to reconsider the role of humanity within life. That's pretty scary. And these are not science fiction writers. These are futurists that sort of extrapolate what is going on. Here's another one, Tracy Follows. What happens to humans' authenticity and autonomy? And I thought about that, and I said, when I write things on social media, I do tweets to my friends, whatever, they're always sort of matter of fact. They're kind of boring. I wish I was funnier. And now I can be funnier with the help of generative AI. I could just run all my little text messages and things to generative AI, and it would be way funnier. But am I still being authentically Lambert then? In fact, I can automate a lot of that thing. I can have it automatically react to other content on social media in the way that I would do. But am I losing my autonomy as a person when I do that? Katinda Sevi, she is a Kenyan futurist. She goes even further and says, we will relinquish our human abilities to think and feel. Now that's all very scary. But let's go back to the beginning where I said, you have all these superpowers. You're very powerful in AI. So what can you do? Now my recommendation to you is, don't only focus on the technical side of AI and on the business applications of AI. Augment your skill set with 3 things. The first is learn about responsible tech. And my team recently published a responsible tech playbook that will show you what kind of methodologies you can use to mitigate all kinds of problems with your technology. Lack of inclusion, environmental problems, bias, discrimination, all these things. It has specific methodologies for that. It's open sourced. You can download it from the UN website. So that's one. The second thing I would recommend is study ethics. Now, if you have the time, if you have 6 months' time, start with the Greek philosophers, Plato, Socrates, all of those. But if you don't have the time, there's lots of material specifically on the ethics of AI, very good materials. Study those and become familiar with it. The third practice that I would want you to learn about is strategic foresight. Because we're focused on what our systems are going to do next year, next month or next year. I worry about what they're going to do 3 years from now or 5 years from now. And you will have that ability to predict that if you study strategic foresight. So that's my recommendation, the 3 things that you can do. Now, I wanted to say something that has become way overused, and I blame the Spider-Man movie for that, but it's very, very true. With great power comes great responsibility. And that is true at the personal level. I'm talking to you at the personal level right here. It's also true at the organizational level. I was meeting with Mila, the Research Institute, yesterday. And they are incredibly influential in the world. And that comes with a responsibility as well. And it's true at the level of nations as well. Some nations have huge capacity in AI, and others don't. You have the haves and the have-nots. That also implies a responsibility. But start with yourselves, and I hope this was inspirational for you, and that you take your responsibility seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we might have time, if you're all willing to take a question, for a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
We should move towards the center here
Yep.
to our
Okay.
mixes. If you have a question for Lambert, please put your hands up and we will send a microphone in your direction. Don't be shy. Oh, here we go. I missed you, didn't see for looking. There we go. Thank you. If you could say who you are and where you come from and then ask your question, that'd be great.
Thank you very much, Lambert. My name is Max Medic. I'm an education influencer. One video I made in the past that received thousands of shares was the alternative we have between different parties. That would be to elect AI government. Do you see any level of involvement of AI to make governance more efficient, be it ministries, departments, or entire replacement of presidents?
Well, when it comes to helping humans to govern, I think there's definitely lots of possibilities to be better informed and to analyze the signals that are coming out of society. When it comes to AI being in control and actually taking decisions, I think one of the odd things is, if you would wanted to do that, you'll have to tell the AI, what are your KPIs? What do you want to optimize for? Human happiness, economic output, or whatever. And you also have to tell it, what are the guardrails? What are the parameters that you have to stay within? What are things that you cannot do? And I think we would be hard-pressed to express that. We would probably spend the next 100 years arguing about what are the best KPIs for humanity to optimize for. So it doesn't really solve the problem.
It's a fair point. No AI president just yet, then.
Not yet.
Please give a huge round of applause to Lambert Hogenhout.